Audrey Hepburn was a British actress and humanitarian. Recognized as both a film and fashion icon, she was ranked by the American Film Institute as the third greatest female screen legend from the classical Hollywood cinema and was inducted into the International Best Dressed List Hall of Fame. Born in Ixelles, Brussels to an aristocratic family, Hepburn spent parts of her childhood in Belgium, England, and the Netherlands. She studied ballet with Sonia Gaskell in Amsterdam beginning in 1945, and with Marie Rambert in London from 1948. She began performing as a chorus girl in West End musical theatre productions and then had minor appearances in several films. She rose to stardom in the romantic comedy Roman Holiday alongside Gregory Peck, for which she was the first actress to win an Oscar, a Golden Globe Award, and a BAFTA Award for a single performance. That year, she also won a Tony Award for Best Lead Actress in a Play for her performance in Ondine. She went on to star in a number of successful films such as Sabrina, in which Humphrey Bogart and William Holden compete for her affection, Funny Face, a musical where she sang her own parts, the drama The Nun's Story, the romantic comedy Breakfast at Tiffany's, the thriller romance Charade, opposite Cary Grant, and the musical My Fair Lady. In 1967 she starred in the thriller Wait Until Dark, receiving Academy Award, Golden Globe, and BAFTA nominations. After that, she only occasionally appeared in films, one being Robin and Marian with Sean Connery. Her last recorded performances were in the 1990 documentary television series Gardens of the World with Audrey Hepburn, for which she won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement Informational Programming. Hepburn won 3 BAFTA Awards for Best British Actress in a Leading Role. In recognition of her film career, she received BAFTA's Lifetime Achievement Award, the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award, the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award, and the Special Tony Award. She remains one of only 17 people who have won Academy, Emmy, Grammy, and Tony Awards. Later in life, Hepburn devoted much of her time to UNICEF, to which she had contributed since 1954. Between 1988 and 1992, she worked in some of the poorest communities of Africa, South America, and Asia. In December 1992, she received the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom in recognition of her work as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. A month later, she died of appendiceal cancer at her home in Vaud, Switzerland at the age of 63. Early life: 1929–1938, family and early childhood. Audrey Kathleen Rustin was born on May 4, 1929 at No. 48 Rue Keenveld in Ixelles, Brussels, Belgium. She was known to her family as Audrey Ange. Hepburn's mother, Baroness Ella van Heemstra, was a Dutch noblewoman. Ella was the daughter of Baron Arnoud van Heemstra, who served as mayor of Arnhem from 1910 to 1920 and as governor of Dutch Suriname from 1921 to 1928, and Baroness Elbrig Willemijn Henriette van Asbeck, a granddaughter of Count Dirk van Hogendorp. At age 19, she married Jonkheer Hendrik Gustaf Adolf Quarles van Ufford, an oil executive based in Batavia, Dutch East Indies, where they subsequently lived. They had 2 sons, Jonkheer Arnoud Robert Alexander Quarles van Ufford and Jonkheer Ian Edgar Bruce Quarles van Ufford, before divorcing in 1925, 4 years before Hepburn's birth. Hepburn's father, Joseph Victor Anthony Rustin, was a British subject born in Auschwitz, Bohemia, Austria-Hungary. He was the son of Victor John George Rustin, of British and Austrian background, and Anna Juliana Franziska Carolina Wells, who was of Austrian origin and born in Kovars. In 1923–1924, Joseph was an honorary British consul in Semarang in the Dutch East Indies, and prior to his marriage to Hepburn's mother, was married to Cornelia Bisschop, a Dutch heiress. Although born with the surname Rustin, he later double-barreled his name to the more aristocratic Hepburn Rustin, perhaps at Ella's insistence, as he mistakenly believed himself descended from James Hepburn, third husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. Hepburn's parents were married in Batavia, Dutch East Indies, in September 1926. At the time, Rustin worked for a trading company, but soon after the marriage, the couple moved to Europe, where he began working for a loan company, reportedly tin merchants Maclean, Watson and Company in London. After a year in London, they moved to Brussels, where he had been assigned to open a branch office. After 3 years of spending time traveling between Brussels, Arnhem, The Hague, and London, the family settled in the suburban Brussels municipality of Linkbeek in 1932. Hepburn's early childhood was sheltered and privileged. Her multinational background was enhanced through her traveling between 3 countries with her family due to her father's job. In the mid-1930s, Hepburn's parents recruited and collected donations for the British Union of Fascists. Joseph left the family abruptly in 1935 after a scene in Brussels when Audrey Hepburn was 6. Later she often spoke of the effect on a child of being dumped, as children need 2 parents. Joseph moved to London, where he became more deeply involved in fascist activity and never visited his daughter abroad. Hepburn later professed that her father's departure was the most traumatic event of my life. That same year, her mother moved with Hepburn to her family's estate in Arnhem. Her half-brothers Alex and Ian were sent to The Hague to live with relatives. Joseph wanted her to be educated in England, so in 1937, Hepburn was sent to live in Kent, England, where she, known as Audrey Rustin or Little Audrey, was educated at a small independent school in Elm. Hepburn's parents officially divorced in 1938. In the 1960s, Hepburn renewed contact with her father after locating him in Dublin through the Red Cross. Although he remained emotionally detached, Hepburn supported him financially until his death. 1939–1945 Experiences during World War II. After Britain declared war on Germany in September 1939, Hepburn's mother moved her daughter back to Arnhem in the hope that, as during the First World War, the Netherlands would remain neutral and be spared a German attack. While there, Hepburn attended the Arnhem Conservatory from 1939 to 1945. She had begun taking ballet lessons during her last years at boarding school, and continued training in Arnhem under the tutelage of Wienje Morava, becoming her star pupil. After the Germans invaded the Netherlands in 1940, Hepburn used the name Etta van Heemstra, because an English-sounding name was considered dangerous during the German occupation. Her family was profoundly affected by the occupation, with Hepburn later stating that had we known that we were going to be occupied for 5 years, we might have all shot ourselves. We thought it might be over next week, 6 months, next year, that's how we got through. In 1942, her uncle, Otto van Limburg-Styrum, was executed in retaliation for an act of sabotage by the resistance movement. While he had not been involved in the act, he was targeted due to his family's prominence in Dutch society. Hepburn's half-brother Ian was deported to Berlin to work in a German labor camp, and her other half-brother Alex went into hiding to avoid the same fate. After her uncle's death, Hepburn, Ella, and Meisje left Arnhem to live with her grandfather, Baron Arnoud van Heemstra, in nearby Velp. Around that time Hepburn performed silent dance performances to raise money for the Dutch resistance effort. It was long believed that she participated in the Dutch resistance itself, but in 2016 the Airborne Museum Hartenstein reported that after extensive research it had not found any evidence of such activities. However, a 2019 book by author Robert Matson provided evidence that she had supported the resistance by giving underground concerts to raise money, delivering the underground newspaper, and taking messages and food to downed Allied flyers hiding in the woodlands north of Velp. She also volunteered at a hospital that was the center of resistance activities in Velp, and her family temporarily hid a paratrooper in their home during the Battle of Arnhem. In addition to other traumatic events, she witnessed the transportation of Dutch Jews to concentration camps, later stating that more than once I was at the station seeing trainloads of Jews being transported, seeing all these faces over the top of the wagon. I remember, very sharply, one little boy standing with his parents on the platform, very pale, very blond, wearing a coat that was much too big for him, and he stepped on the train. I was a child observing a child. After the Allied landing on D-Day, living conditions grew worse, and Arnhem was subsequently heavily damaged during Operation Market Garden. During the Dutch famine that followed in the winter of 1944, the Germans blocked the resupply routes of already limited food and fuel supplies as retaliation for railway strikes that were held to hinder German occupation. Like others, Hepburn's family resorted to making flour out of tulip bulbs to bake cakes and biscuits, a source of starchy carbohydrates. Dutch doctors provided recipes for using tulip bulbs throughout the famine. Hepburn developed acute anemia, respiratory problems, and edema as a result of malnutrition. The Van Heemstra family was also seriously financially affected by the occupation, during which many of their properties, including their principal estate in Arnhem, were badly damaged or destroyed. Entertainment career. 1945–1952, ballet studies and early acting roles. After the war ended in 1945, Hepburn moved with her mother and siblings to Amsterdam, where she began ballet training under Sonia Gaskell, a leading figure in Dutch ballet, and Russian teacher Olga Tarasova. As the family's fortune had been lost during the war, Ella supported them by working as a cook and housekeeper for a wealthy family. Hepburn made her film debut playing an air stewardess in Dutch in 7 Lessons, an educational travel film made by Charles van der Linden and Henry Josephson. Later that year, Hepburn moved to London after accepting a ballet scholarship with Ballet Rambert, which was then based in Notting Hill. She supported herself with part-time work as a model, and dropped Ruston from her surname. After she was told by Rambert that despite her talent, her height and weak constitution would make the status of prima ballerina unattainable, she decided to concentrate on acting. While Ella worked in menial jobs to support them, Hepburn appeared as a chorus girl in the West End musical theatre revues High Button Shoes at the London Hippodrome, and Cecil Landau's Sauce Tartar and Sauce Piquant at the Cambridge Theatre. Also, in 1950, she worked as a dancer in an exceptionally ambitious revue, Summer Nights, at Ciro's London, a prominent nightclub. During her theatrical work, she took elocution lessons with actor Felix Aylmer to develop her voice. After being spotted by the Ealing Studios casting director, Margaret Harper Nelson, while performing in Sauce Piquant, Hepburn was registered as a freelance actress with the Associated British Picture Corporation. She appeared in the BBC television play The Silent Village, and in minor roles in the films One Wild Oat, Laughter in Paradise, Young Wives' Tale, and The Lavender Hill Mob. She was cast in her first major supporting role in Thorold Dickinson's Secret People, as a prodigious ballerina, performing all of her own dancing sequences. Hepburn was then offered a small role in a film being shot in both English and French, Monte Carlo Baby, which was filmed in Monte Carlo. Coincidentally, French novelist Colette was at the Hôtel de Paris in Monte Carlo during the filming, and decided to cast Hepburn in the title role in the Broadway play Gigi. Hepburn went into rehearsals having never spoken on stage, and required private coaching. When Gigi opened at the Fulton Theatre on November 24, 1951, she received praise for her performance, despite criticism that the stage version was inferior to the French film adaptation. Life called her a hit, while the New York Times stated that her quality is so winning and so right that she is the success of the evening. Hepburn also received a Theatre World Award for the role. The play ran for 219 performances, closing on May 31, 1952, before going on tour, which began October 13, 1952 in Pittsburgh and visited Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles, before closing on May 16, 1953 in San Francisco. 1953–1960, I Roman Holiday/I and Stardom. None. 1961–1967, I Breakfast at Tiffany's/I and Continued Success. None. 1968–1993, Semi-Retirement and Final Projects. After 1967, Hepburn chose to devote more time to her family and acted only occasionally in the following decades. She attempted a comeback playing Maid Marian in the period piece Robin and Marian with Sean Connery co-starring as Robin Hood, which was moderately successful. Roger Ebert praised Hepburn's chemistry with Connery, writing, "Connery and Hepburn seem to have arrived at a tacit understanding between themselves about their characters. They glow. They really do seem in love. And they project as marvelously complex, fond, tender people. The passage of 20 years has given them grace and wisdom." Hepburn reunited with director Terence Young in the production of Bloodline, sharing top billing with Ben Gazzara, James Mason, and Romy Schneider. The film, an international intrigue amid the jet set, was a critical and box office failure. Hepburn's last starring role in a feature film was opposite Gazzara in the comedy They All Laughed, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. The film was overshadowed by the murder of one of its stars, Dorothy Stratton, and received only a limited release. 6 years later, Hepburn co-starred with Robert Wagner in a made-for-television caper film, Love Among Thieves. After finishing her last motion picture role, a cameo appearance as an angel in Steven Spielberg's Always, Hepburn completed only 2 more entertainment-related projects, both critically acclaimed. Gardens of the World with Audrey Hepburn was a PBS documentary series, which was filmed on location in 7 countries in the spring and summer of 1990. A 1-hour special preceded it in March 1991, and the series itself began its national PBS premiere on January 24, 1993, the day of her funeral services in Tolokinas. For the Flower Gardens episode, Hepburn was posthumously awarded the 1993 Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement Informational Programming. The other project was a spoken-word album, Audrey Hepburn's Enchanted Tales, which features readings of classic children's stories and was recorded in 1992. It earned her a posthumous Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album for Children. Humanitarian career. In the 1950s, Hepburn narrated 2 radio programs for UNICEF, retelling children's stories of war. In 1989, Hepburn was appointed a Goodwill Ambassador of UNICEF. On her appointment, she stated that she was grateful for receiving international aid after enduring the German occupation as a child, and wanted to show her gratitude to the organization. 1988–1989. Hepburn's first field mission for UNICEF was to Ethiopia in 1988. She visited an orphanage in Mekelle that housed 500 starving children and had UNICEF send food. Of the trip, she said, "I have a broken heart. I feel desperate. I can't stand the idea that 2 million people are in imminent danger of starving to death, many of them children, not because there isn't tons of food sitting in the northern port of Shoa. It can't be distributed." Last spring, Red Cross and UNICEF workers were ordered out of the northern provinces because of 2 simultaneous civil wars. "I went into rebel country and saw mothers and their children who had walked for 10 days, even 3 weeks, looking for food, settling onto the desert floor into makeshift camps where they may die. Horrible. That image is too much for me. The Third World is a term I don't like very much, because we're all one world. I want people to know that the largest part of humanity is suffering. In August 1988, Hepburn went to Turkey on an immunization campaign. She called Turkey the loveliest example of UNICEF's capabilities. Of the trip, she said, "The army gave us their trucks, the fishmongers gave their wagons for the vaccines, and once the date was set, it took 10 days to vaccinate the whole country. Not bad." In October, Hepburn went to South America. Of her experiences in Venezuela and Ecuador, Hepburn told the United States Congress, "I saw tiny mountain communities, slums, and shanty towns receive water systems for the first time by some miracle, and the miracle is UNICEF. I watched boys build their own schoolhouse with bricks and cement provided by UNICEF." Hepburn toured Central America in February 1989, and met with leaders in Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. In April, she visited Sudan with Wolders as part of a mission called Operation Lifeline. Because of civil war, food from aid agencies had been cut off. The mission was to ferry food to southern Sudan. Hepburn said, "I saw but one glaring truth: these are not natural disasters but man-made tragedies for which there is only one man-made solution: peace." In October 1989, Hepburn and Wolders went to Bangladesh. John Isaac, a UN photographer, said, "Often the kids would have flies all over them, but she would just go hug them. I had never seen that. Other people had a certain amount of hesitation, but she would just grab them. Children would just come up to hold her hand, touch her. She was like the Pied Piper." 1990–1992. In October 1990, Hepburn went to Vietnam, in an effort to collaborate with the government for national UNICEF-supported immunization and clean water programs. In September 1992, 4 months before she died, Hepburn went to Somalia. Calling it apocalyptic, she said, "I walked into a nightmare. I have seen famine in Ethiopia and Bangladesh, but I have seen nothing like this, so much worse than I could possibly have imagined. I wasn't prepared for this." Though scarred by what she had seen, Hepburn still had hope, stating, "As we move into the 21st century, there is much to reflect upon. We look around us and see that the promises of yesterday have to come to pass. People still live in abject poverty, people are still hungry, people still struggle to survive. And among these people we see the children, always the children, their enlarged bellies, their sad eyes, their wise faces that show the suffering, all the suffering they have endured in their short years." Recognition. United States President George H.W. Bush presented Hepburn with the Presidential Medal of Freedom in recognition of her work with UNICEF, and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences posthumously awarded her the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award for her contribution to humanity. In 2002, at the United Nations Special Session on Children, UNICEF honored Hepburn's legacy of humanitarian work by unveiling a statue, "The Spirit of Audrey," at UNICEF's New York headquarters. Her service for children is also recognized through the United States Fund for UNICEF's Audrey Hepburn Society. Personal life. Marriages, relationships, and children. In 1952, Hepburn became engaged to industrialist James Hansen, whom she had known since her early days in London. She called it love at first sight, but after having her wedding dress fitted and the date set, she decided the marriage would not work because the demands of their careers would keep them apart most of the time. She issued a public statement about her decision, saying, "When I get married, I want to be really married." In the early 1950s, she also dated future hair producer Michael Butler. At a cocktail party hosted by mutual friend Gregory Peck, Hepburn met American actor Mel Ferrer, and suggested that they star together in a play. The meeting led them to collaborate in Ondine, during which they began a relationship. 8 months later, On September 25, 1954, they were married in Buggenstock, Switzerland, while preparing to star together in the film War and Peace. She and Ferrer had a son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer. Despite the insistence from gossip columns that their marriage would not last, Hepburn claimed that she and Ferrer were inseparable and happy together, though she admitted that he had a bad temper. Ferrer was rumored to be too controlling, and had been referred to by others as being her Svengali, an accusation that Hepburn laughed off. William Holden was quoted as saying, "I think Audrey allows Mel to think he influences her." After a 14-year marriage, the couple divorced in 1968. Hepburn met her second husband, Italian psychiatrist Andrea Ditti, on a Mediterranean cruise with friends in June 1968. She believed she would have more children and possibly stop working. They married on January 18, 1969, and their son Luca Andrea Ditti was born on February 8, 1970. While pregnant with Luca in 1969, Hepburn was more careful, resting for months before delivering the baby via cesarean section. Both Ditti and Hepburn were unfaithful, with Ditti having affairs with younger women and Hepburn having a romantic relationship with actor Ben Gazzara during the filming of the movie Bloodline. The Ditti-Hepburn marriage lasted 13 years and was dissolved in 1982. From 1980 until her death, Hepburn was in a relationship with Dutch actor Robert Woldetters, the widower of actress Merle Oberon. She had met Woldetters through a friend during the later years of her second marriage. In 1989, she called the 9 years she had spent with him the happiest years of her life, and stated that she considered them married, just not officially. Illness and death. Upon returning from Somalia to Switzerland in late September 1992, Hepburn developed abdominal pain. While initial medical tests in Switzerland had inconclusive results, a laparoscopy performed at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles in early November revealed a rare form of abdominal cancer belonging to a group of cancers known as pseudomyxoma peritoneae. Having grown slowly over several years, the cancer had metastasized as a thin coating over her small intestine. After surgery, Hepburn began chemotherapy. Hepburn and her family returned home to Switzerland to celebrate her last Christmas. As she was still recovering from surgery, she was unable to fly on commercial aircraft. Her longtime friend, fashion designer Hubert de Givenchy, arranged for socialite Rachel Lambert Bunny Mellon to send her private Gulfstream jet, filled with flowers, to take Hepburn from Los Angeles to Geneva. She spent her last days in hospice care at her home in Tolokienas, Vaud, and was occasionally well enough to take walks in her garden, but gradually became more confined to bedrest. On the evening of January 20, 1993, Hepburn died in her sleep at home. After her death, Gregory Peck recorded a tribute to Hepburn in which he recited the poem Unending Love by Rabindranath Tagore. Funeral services were held at the village church of Tolokienas on January 24, 1993. Maurice Eindeger, the same pastor who wed Hepburn and Mel Ferrer and baptized her son Sean in 1960, presided over her funeral, while Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan of UNICEF delivered a eulogy. Many family members and friends attended the funeral, including her sons, partner Robert Woldetters, half-brother Ian Quarles van Uford, ex-husbands Andrea Ditti and Mel Ferrer, Hubert de Givenchy, executives of UNICEF, and fellow actors Elaine Delon and Roger Moore. Flower arrangements were sent to the funeral by Gregory Peck, Elizabeth Taylor, and the Dutch royal family. Later on the same day, Hepburn was interred at the Tolokienas Cemetery. Legacy. Hepburn's legacy has endured long after her death. The American Film Institute named Hepburn third among the greatest female stars of all time. She is one of few entertainers who have won Academy, Emmy, Grammy, and Tony Awards. She won a record 3 BAFTA Awards for Best British Actress in a Leading Role. In her last years, she remained a visible presence in the film world. She received a tribute from the Film Society of Lincoln Center in 1991 and was a frequent presenter at the Academy Awards. She received the BAFTA Lifetime Achievement Award in 1992. She was the recipient of numerous posthumous awards including the 1993 Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award and competitive Grammy and Emmy Awards. In January 2009, Hepburn was named on the Times list of the top 10 British actresses of all time. However, in 2010 Emma Thompson commented that Hepburn can't sing and she can't really act. Some people agreed, others did not. Hepburn's son Sean later said, "My mother would be the first person to say that she wasn't the best actress in the world. But she was a movie star." She has been the subject of many biographies since her death, including the 2000 dramatization of her life titled The Audrey Hepburn Story, which starred Jennifer Love Hewitt and Emmy Rossum as the older and younger Hepburn respectively. Her son and granddaughter, Sean and Emma Ferrer, helped produce a biographical documentary directed by Helena Cohen, entitled Audrey. The film was released to positive reception. Hepburn's image is widely used in advertising campaigns across the world. In Japan, a series of commercials used colorized and digitally enhanced clips of Hepburn in Roman holiday to advertise Kirin black tea. In the United States, Hepburn was featured in a 2006 Gap commercial which used clips of her dancing from Funny Face, set to AC/DC's Back in Black, with the tagline "It's back, the skinny black pant." To celebrate its Keep It Simple campaign, the Gap made a sizable donation to the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund. In 2012, Hepburn was among the British cultural icons selected by artist Sir Peter Blake to appear in a new version of his best-known artwork, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover, to celebrate the British cultural figures of his life that he most admires. In 2013, a computer-manipulated representation of Hepburn was used in a television advert for the British chocolate bar Galaxy. On May 4, 2014, Google featured a doodle on its homepage on what would have been Hepburn's 85th birthday. Sean Ferrer founded the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund in memory of his mother shortly after her death. The U.S. Fund for UNICEF also founded the Audrey Hepburn Society. The society hosted annual charity balls for fundraising until Ferrer became involved in lawsuits in the late 2010s on behalf of his mother's estate. Duddy also became patron of the pseudomyxoma survivor charity, dedicated to providing support to patients of the rare cancer which was fatal to Hepburn, pseudomyxoma peritonia, and Sean Ferrer became the rare disease ambassador since 2014 and for 2015 on behalf of European Organization for Rare Diseases. A year after his mother's death in 1993, Ferrer founded the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, a charity funded by exhibitions of Audrey Hepburn memorabilia. He directed the charity in cooperation with his half-brother Luca Duddy, and Robert Wolders, his mother's partner, which aimed to continue the humanitarian work of Audrey Hepburn. Ferrer brought the exhibition Timeless Audrey on a world tour to raise money for the foundation. He served as chairman of the fund before resigning in 2012, turning over the position to Duddy. In 2017, Ferrer was sued by the fund for alleged self-ing conduct. In October 2017, Ferrer responded by suing the fund for trademark infringement, claiming that the fund no longer had the right to use Hepburn's name or likeness. Ferrer's suit against the fund was dismissed in March 2018 due to the complaint's failure to include Duddy as a defendant. In 2019, the court sided with Ferrer, with the judge ruling there was no merit to the charity's claims it had the independent right to use Audrey Hepburn's name and likeness, or to enter into contracts with third parties without Ferrer's consent. Hepburn's son Sean said that he was brought up in the countryside as a normal child, not in Hollywood, and without a Hollywood state of mind that makes movie stars and their families lose touch with reality. There was no screening room in the house. He said that his mother didn't take herself seriously, and used to say, "I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously." Public image and style icon. Hepburn was known for her fashion choices and distinctive look, to the extent that journalist Mark Tunget has described her as a recognizable brand. When she first rose to stardom in Roman Holiday, she was seen as an alternative feminine ideal that appealed more to women than men, in comparison to the curvy and more sexual Grace Kelly and Elizabeth Taylor. With her short hairstyle, thick eyebrows, slim body, and gamine looks, she presented a look which young women found easier to emulate than those of more sexual film stars. In 1954, fashion photographer Cecil Beaton declared Hepburn the public embodiment of our new feminine ideal in Vogue, and wrote that nobody ever looked like her before World War II. Yet we recognize the rightness of this appearance in relation to our historical needs. The proof is that thousands of imitations have appeared. The magazine and its British version frequently reported on her style throughout the following decade. Alongside model Twiggy, Hepburn has been cited as one of the key public figures who made being very slim fashionable. Vogue has referred to her as the acme of classic beauty. Added to the International Best Dressed list in 1961, Hepburn was associated with a minimalistic style, usually wearing clothes with simple silhouettes which emphasized her slim body, monochromatic colors, and occasional statement accessories. In the late 1950s, Audrey Hepburn popularized plain black leggings. Hepburn was in particular associated with French fashion designer Hubert de Givenchy, who was first hired to design her on-screen wardrobe for her second Hollywood film, Sabrina, when she was still unknown as a film actor and he a young couturier just starting his fashion house. Although initially disappointed that Miss Hepburn was not Katharine Hepburn as he had mistakenly thought, Givenchy and Hepburn formed a lifelong friendship. In addition to Sabrina, Givenchy designed her costumes for Love in the Afternoon, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Funny Face, Charade, Paris When It Sizzles, and How to Steal a Million, as well as clothed her off-screen. According to Mosley, fashion plays an unusually central role in many of Hepburn's films, stating that the costume is not tied to the character, functioning silently in the mise-en-scene, but as fashion becomes an attraction in the aesthetic in its own right. She also became the face of Givenchy's first perfume, L'Interdit, in 1957. In addition to her partnership with Givenchy, Hepburn was credited with boosting the sales of Burberry trench coats when she wore one in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and was associated with Italian footwear brand Tod's. In her private life, Hepburn preferred to wear casual and comfortable clothes, contrary to the haute couture she wore on screen and at public events. Despite being admired for her beauty, she never considered herself attractive, stating in a 1959 interview that "You can even say that I hated myself at certain periods. I was too fat, or maybe too tall, or maybe just plain too ugly. You can say my definiteness stems from underlying feelings of insecurity and inferiority. I couldn't conquer these feelings by acting indecisive. I found the only way to get the better of them was by adopting a forceful, concentrated drive." In 1989, she stated that "My look is attainable. Women can look like Audrey Hepburn by flipping out their hair, buying the large glasses and the little sleeveless dresses." Hepburn's influence as a style icon continues several decades after the height of her acting career in the 1950s and 1960s. Mosley notes that especially after her death in 1993, she became increasingly admired, with magazines frequently advising readers on how to get her look and fashion designers using her as inspiration. Throughout her career and after her death, Hepburn received numerous accolades for her stylish appearance and attractiveness. For example, she was named the Most Beautiful Woman of All Time and Most Beautiful Woman of the 20th Century in polls by Evian and QVC respectively, and in 2015, was voted the most stylish Brit of all time in a poll commissioned by Samsung. Her film costumes fetch large sums of money in auctions. One of the little black dresses designed by Givenchy for breakfast at Tiffany's was sold by Christie's for a record sum of £467,200 in 2006. Filmography and stage roles. Hepburn was considered by some to be one of the most beautiful women of all time. She was ranked as the third greatest screen legend in American cinema by the American Film Institute. Hepburn is also remembered as both a film and style icon. Her debut was as a flight stewardess in the 1948 Dutch film Dutch in 7 Lessons. Hepburn then performed on the British stage as a chorus girl in the musicals High Button Shoes and Sauce Tartar. 2 years later she made her Broadway debut as the title character in the play Gigi. Hepburn's Hollywood debut as a runaway princess in William Wyler's Roman Holiday opposite Gregory Peck made her a star. For her performance she received the Academy Award for Best Actress, the BAFTA Award for Best British Actress, and the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. In 1954 she played a chauffeur's daughter caught in a love triangle in Billy Wilder's romantic comedy Sabrina opposite Humphrey Bogart and William Holden. In the same year Hepburn garnered the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play for portraying the titular water nymph in the play Ondine. Awards and honors. Hepburn received numerous awards and honors during her career. Hepburn won, or was nominated for, awards for her work in motion pictures, television, spoken word recording, on stage, and humanitarian work. She was 5 times nominated for an Academy Award, and she was awarded the 1953 Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Roman Holiday and the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1993, posthumously, for her humanitarian work. She won a record 3 BAFTA Awards for Best British Actress in a Leading Role, from 5 nominations, and she received a Lifetime Achievement Award in 1992. See also L. List of EGOT winners. Sophia, a humanoid robot modeled after Audrey Hepburn. White floral Givenchy dress of Audrey Hepburn. Notes.